Hi and welcome. Thank you for the nice introduction. Today I'll present a joint work with Sandra Höltervennhoff and Nicolas Huaman, supervised by Yasemin, Acar, and Sascha Fahl, in which we were asked if we would give the same priority to a bank and a gaming website, while we explored credential management strategies and related obstacles during initial password manager setup. So to begin with, I want to briefly talk about password managers. They're, in theory, tools that can increase online security by reducing cognitive load. So they allow users to create more complex and much longer passwords. They store them for users so they don't need to memorize anything else than one single master password. However, the extent of this additional received security benefit heavily relies on users adding all of their accounts and upgrading all of their passwords to stronger alternatives as soon as possible. And recent studies have also shown that users nowadays have on average 100 online accounts. So that means that this task of initially adding and updating all credentials is a very long and tedious one. Additionally, users might have issues remembering all of their accounts. We are therefore interested in our work which strategies users actually apply when they are initially confronted with the task of setting up and filling their freshly installed password manager. To investigate this, we conducted a mixed method study to answer our research questions, which was first, we were interested in which helpful onboarding features are present within password managers. And we used an expert review study to experience this process for ourselves. Secondly, we wanted to know what the strategies were that users applied when adding their passwords and what reasons they had to do so. And from the results of these both experiments, we draw recommendations to answer our third research question regarding how we can help users with this tedious task of adding their passwords and how we can overall improve this process to increase online security. So let me start with the first research question regarding these onboarding features present in password managers. In this experiment, we installed 14 different password managers, 2 of which were the built-in variants within Chrome and Firefox. We used both locally installed offline password managers as well as cloud-based ones, and tried to use the free basic plans wherever possible. Within these expert reviews, we followed a fixed set of tasks that was designed to investigate and find features helpful for users when adding passwords, such as import features or autosave, or that we want to increase password security by, for example, detecting weak passwords. We furthermore followed all on-screen prompts to experience the whole onboarding process. And finally, we recorded our experience for comparison and later reference. Next, I want to present the different features we found. We distinguished 3 different categories, and the first were features that were meant to motivate or educate users. And we found them in at most a third of our sample. And that includes very basic things, such as tutorials that showcase and explain features of the password manager, as well as loose lists of tips and next steps. Furthermore, we found one password manager that bundled these tasks into a set of achievements and even offered a discount to the premium plan of this password manager to users who completed all of the tasks. Secondly, we found 3 different features meant to help users actively add their passwords. First of all, this includes imports from, for example, manually compiled lists or the databases of previously used password managers, as well as autosave features that ask users if they want to store their new credentials whenever they are entered, and the password manager detects that they are not stored yet. While we found these first 2 in almost all of the password managers we examined, we found account suggestions only in 4. And that's a very interesting and I think helpful features to help users remember accounts they might have, because they're confronted with very generic lists of popular websites that the password manager think they might have because they're just very popular. Finally, we found several features designed to increase password security itself. This includes security centers, which compile an overview over the security of all stored passwords, for example, by flagging weak, reused, or old passwords. These were present in a majority of examined password managers. Half of the password managers we investigated included breach warnings that inform users if either their email address or any of their stored passwords were present in any data breach. And interestingly, this was often available only within the paid plan, although the data itself was often taken from the public and free servers have been pwned. Furthermore, we found the majority, but not all password managers, to enforce that the single master password that users need to remember and that allows access to all other passwords needs to be long or complex, and only half of the password managers offered password meters that gauge the strength of the chosen passwords. And some of them only did that after the password was initially stored, so that users would have needed to go back into adding them and changing them. After identifying these helpful present features, we were interested in the strategies that users actually applied and what experiences they made during their initial setup. To examine this, we conducted a prolific survey with 279 end users that were password manager users, which we knew because we conducted a pre-survey about which password manager they were using. We asked them about several things regarding their strategy. First and foremost, their initial strategy and what current strategy they are using nowadays when adding new passwords. Whether they used other helpful features such as password generators, or if they stored other data such as credit card information, for example. What good or bad experiences they made during their initial setup, and what improvements to the process they would have wished for. Regarding the strategies, we found that the most common one was actually not really a strategy at all, as most users stated that they just added all credentials whenever they accessed the respective service or website. Second most common was to initially only add accounts that users deemed to be their most important ones or their most frequently used ones, and there we actually merged two strategies because we found that users used both terms interchangeably. And otherwise, we identified 7 different strategies in total, but besides these 2, the others were pretty much irrelevant in practice. Furthermore, we asked them not only about their initial strategy, but also what they're doing nowadays when they add new credentials, and we found that strategies tended to shift towards adding new accounts on access, which makes actually sense, because at that point, users now have finished their initial setup, they have added whatever they wanted to add, and so, whenever they get new credentials that fit their scheme of adding passwords, they just add them on access when creating them. Regarding the reasons for strategy choice, we found that the decision was mostly driven by either convenience, so how easy or how seamless is the process of adding new passwords, or by efficiency, so how quickly can I solve this task, or how easy is it to sufficiently complete it, and then I'm done. And while there were other reasons that were also not as relevant, we found especially that security played only a secondary role in this decision process. To sum up some of our main takeaways, we first and foremost found that users were perceiving password managers not as a security tool that allows them to have stronger passwords and to be more secure online, but rather as a convenience tool. So password managers were pretty much used as an alternative to, for example, storing passwords on paper. And we also observed a certain lack of trust against password managers and password manager developers. So password managers were perceived as kind of black box, and users didn't really know what they do to encrypt passwords and how they're actually stored and what happens with them. And that was present in multiple questions. And for example, when we asked for strategy, we found that 10% stated to initially only add their least relevant passwords because they didn't trust the password manager with the more important ones. And we also found about a quarter of participants that stated that due to this lack of trust, because they didn't know who could access them, they overall didn't add all of their personal passwords. Finally, we found that when users stated to prioritize certain accounts, they mostly named social media, email, or financial accounts. So from these 2 studies, we draw our recommendations to password manager vendors, which I want to present in the following. So again, we bundled this up in 3 different categories, and the first of which would be, we would suggest to ease the process even further. We found that convenience drives this process, that this is a tedious task that users just want to get over with and want to get done with. And so we suggest that there should be, for example, more automation to help users have a more seamless experience and to have a password manager do more of the work for them. Secondly, we think that these additions could further be guided. For example, if I add one password and I'm done with, I could be guided into adding the next one immediately versus searching the field where I can add it after I'm done. Additionally, we found that users often have issues finding the accounts that they have and own and that they might want to store. And we think that an interesting approach could be account scans. This is something that Dashlane actually did for a while, and then they removed the feature again. But within this, password managers could use, for example, browser histories or email inboxes to search for example, registration emails or visited login pages, anything that tells them this is a website that the user might have an account on, to suggest them to add it to the password manager and therefore help them recognize accounts they want to add. Obviously, this can be very privacy invasive, even if locally run, so we suggest that alternatively, the account suggestions, what we found present in only 4 password managers, should be adopted more widely. And this is also something that might need some kind of regional feature, because of course, if I'm centered in Europe and I get suggested a lot of American banks, that doesn't help me again. Yeah, and finally, we think that there need to be more features to motivate and inform users. So for example, to mitigate the lack of distrust that we found, that was often also against the password manager vendors, or if their passwords were really stored securely, we suggest that the privacy labels that are already a topic for example, mobile apps, could be adopted and modified to explain to users, for example, how the passwords are encrypted or who can access them. And we also think that to make this process just a little bit more fun and engaging, password manager vendors should include, for example, gamification or nudges. Okay, with this, I conclude my presentation and thank you all for being here, and I'm happy to answer any questions now.